Welcome back. CyberSpace.
Welcome back to another episode of the CyberSpace podcast by Empirical Training, where the mission statement is always the same. It's democratizing education. It's lowering that barrier to entry for cybersecurity information. I think someone nicked our tagline. Who was posting it? Was it you that posted the screenshot?
I come across a no names mentioned to the creator, but we see you.
You've stolen our tagline, mate. It's all right. Two people can democratize education. It's fine. But yeah, mate, speaking of democratizing education, I'm absolutely shattered because we've been working around the clock tirelessly to create all of our school.com content for our gold tier. I'm enjoying it. It's taken a lot of time, but I think it's going to be really, really useful. And I think our members, if you ever do become a member, you'll find a lot of value from it. How are you getting on with yours anyway?
Yeah, it's a bit of a slog, but I know it's going towards a good cause, so this will be worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. But today's podcast, we've got a guest on, so we're going to bring her onto the stage. This is the first time we've done this. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you're not going to be able to see it, but welcome to the stage, Morgan Demboski.
Hello, hello. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. And yeah, just wanted to get you on. I saw your page on LinkedIn and had a bit of a snoop, as you do, as I'm doing my my recon, and yeah, seen that you've got some interesting stuff. So yeah, be great to just hear everything about you, how it all got started, and how you got into the tech industry, how you got into cybersecurity. I know we had a bit of a conversation beforehand on one of the debrief calls, and yeah, your route into the industry was an unconventional one, just like myself and some of the other guys that are part of Empirical Training haven't taken that like standard pathway in. And yeah, I think it's important to raise awareness around that, because a lot of people think you got to go to high school, college, get the masters and specialize in computer science, but yeah, there are other ways that you can find your way into the industry. So yeah, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Would be happy to. So yes, as you said, I definitely had a little bit of an unexpected entry into the cybersecurity industry. For a little context, I currently work as a cyber threat intelligence analyst for a company called Sophos Cybersecurity. And I've been in the industry, I guess, now for a little over 3 years. So I'm definitely, I would still call myself a newbie compared to a lot of other people. But yeah, cybersecurity was definitely not something that I expected to do coming out of college. But I guess life had other plans in that sense. I graduated college in May of 2020. So I think, like a lot of other people who graduated that year, the pandemic definitely had a large impact on my postgraduate plans. The job that I had lined up after graduation as a consultant of some form, that fell through. I ended up moving back home with my parents in Georgia rather than moving to Washington, D.C. like I'd planned. And because the hiring market was just so rough, I decided it was probably a good time as any to go ahead and try to get a master's degree. So while I was trying to look for jobs, I was also in school full time, remotely, of course, to get a master's in security and intelligence. And so at that time, my background in terms of college and my undergrad was, my major was social justice. I had another major in political science, and my interests and my research interests were really in the areas of counterterrorism, international security, geopolitics. So I was really looking for intelligence analyst roles related to those topics and related to those things. But when it came down to it, I think I just really needed a job. So I was applying to any role that I thought I could remotely fit, looking for things that had like threats and intelligence and analyst in the role, and just applying. I had probably applied to easily over 100 jobs at that point and was having very little to no luck. But one of those happened to be an application at a cybersecurity startup for a threat hunter position. And at that time, I had zero experience or knowledge in anything cyber related. I had no idea what a threat hunter was, other than that it sounded pretty cool, and they hunted for things on computers. But for some miracle, I was deeply surprised to find that I got an interview for that position. And during that interview, the manager basically said to me, "Well, you are completely unqualified for this threat hunter position. But I liked your cover letter. I read a couple of your writing samples, and you seem to be a great writer. So we're actually working on building a threat analysis team here, and we have a gap currently in our reporting and our content creation efforts around the analysis that they were doing. So long story short, they decided that if I was willing to deal with the very steep learning curve and work really hard, they would create a new role to help, for me to help fill this gap that they had. And that's kind of how it all started. I dove headfirst into the world of cybersecurity, and I worked as a threat intelligence analyst at the company, which is called IronNet Cybersecurity. They're a network detection and response company, for a little over 2 years before I transitioned to my current role as a threat intel analyst at Sophos. So, it definitely was unexpected. I was not expecting to get that position or to end up in cybersecurity, but now that I'm here, I kind of love it. So I don't know how you guys feel coming from unconventional backgrounds into cybersecurity, but I'm glad that I'm here now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's almost like the stars aligned for you with that role. With
Yeah.
your original experience, I'm really interested in hearing about your undergraduate degree. So, what was the intention in getting into that in the first place? You mentioned it was something that you're interested in. Is it something you may have saw online? Is it maybe something in your upbringing?
Yeah, that's a great question. My major with, of social justice, it's not one that was too common. I went to a smaller school in Ohio called Miami of Ohio. So if there's anybody listening that went there, shout out. But I ended up going there because the major of social justice was so intriguing to me. I think societally there are a lot of structural issues, and I think figuring out how all of those problems contribute to one another and coming up with practical solutions to those problems is, not only very worthwhile in terms of the world, but also in terms of critical thinking and being able to problem solve. So I thought it was a very interesting major. And while I was in social justice, I did a track in crime and law. So I was focused more on like the criminal and security aspects of social justice. And I became deeply involved with a research project called the Terrorism Prosecution Project that investigated how terrorism and domestic extremism are prosecuted within the US. So I was a huge part of that project for upwards of 5 or so years. So I did a lot of research related to domestic extremism and terrorism, which really sparked my interest in security and intelligence and kind of paved the way for the rest of my experience and into my master's degree.
How did you find the skills from your social justice undergrad helped facilitate you when coming into that more cybersecurity focused role?
Yeah, I think it's definitely given a different perspective in terms of just knowing about the different interactions of governments around the world, how nation states operate, and then also knowing about the different security elements and just how to be able to analyze intelligence and knowing those basic intelligence analysis foundations, I think has been really important in my transition into cybersecurity, because cyber threat intelligence, a big part of that is being able to analyze the intelligence separate from the cybersecurity portion of it. So having those basic fundamental skills, I think, really paved the way for me to be able to be successful in this, cyber role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really love, sorry, Rob, I was going to say, I really love the intelligence side of things. I find like the whole threat actor approach and all the different ADPs super interesting. I always make the joke that my partner's really interested in celebrities and stuff, whereas I'm more interested in like the threat actors and what they're getting up to and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's nice to see the similar interest for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can
I was just
imagine.
gonna Yeah, I was just going to touch on the recruitment process, and you said that you applied for close to 100 jobs. How did you find that, and did you feel dissuaded at points, and how did you push through? And I'd love to see that cover letter. It sounds like it was amazing.
You know, as you continually tried to like modify the cover letter and the resume to fit different positions, it evolved into something that was like kind of weird and pretty out there. Something about, I talked about a research paper I did on turtles in the 3rd grade, and that's how I kind of started off the cover letter, because I feel like as a recruiter, when you are reading all of these resumes and all of these cover letters, and it's the same copy paste format of like, I'm applying to this position because I know how to do this, it gets very boring. So I was like trying to stick out a little bit more, especially when it was in COVID, where it was just so hard to get a job. So it can be very discouraging at times, especially because I felt like I was applying to a lot of roles that I was kind of perfect for, in terms of like counterterrorism intelligence analyst roles, where I had a lot of background in it for, you know, someone coming out of college, and I felt very well suited. But of course, you know, I never heard back from any of those roles that I thought I was well suited for, and happened to hear back from the only role that I really thought I was unqualified for. So I think it can be discouraging, but I feel like applying for a job where you feel like you might not have the qualifications, it definitely can pay off in the end. And so it's not everybody's experience, but I would advise that if you're in the middle of trying to apply to all of these different jobs and you kind of feel like it's impossible, to just keep trying, because something will come back, and it may not be something that you expect, but it might turn out better than you expected. So
talking to a lot of our school community, a lot of people are in the same sort of situation which you was in, where they're applying to jobs, they're not getting back, or they're getting back with negative responses, and it seems like they're getting disheartened. How did you navigate that and try to stay optimistic in those situations?
I think it really helped that I was also in my master's program. So I knew that I was building up skills consistently to help me in roles. So, you know, even if I wasn't getting anything, you know, getting any feedback or getting any jobs right now, that I was building up the skills on the side to get those in the future. So, you know, not everybody can, you know, pursue a master's degree at the same time they're applying for jobs. But, you know, if you are on the side trying to learn and trying to fuel your knowledge to make your skills and make your experience more robust, I think that that can be an encouraging factor of like, okay, these didn't work out, but I'm at least investing in myself to make sure that the future ones do work out.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think there's a certain level of discipline and like positive reinforcement that goes along with that. Um, that
Yeah.
painstaking process of trying to find the right role, and knowing and having that mindset of it's when and not if. It doesn't matter if you get knocked back time and time again. You just have to keep persevering, and yeah, when the
Yeah.
stars align and when the right role comes around, it'll work out. It'll work out well. So you've landed that role then as the threat researcher. Talk us through like the first couple of weeks. Was it overwhelming? Did you have to
Oh
write a
my
list
gosh.
down of everything that you thought that you had to learn? Where's your head at?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, honestly, those first couple months, I was in a constant state of confusion. Honestly, maybe the first couple years, just a constant state of confusion of sitting in meetings and having absolutely no idea what anybody is talking about. I was like, how is there so many acronyms for different things? I've never heard these before. Like, what is anybody talking about? And so it was definitely very difficult to be able to catch on to what everybody was talking about and learn. But I was very, very lucky to have a team and have a manager that was really invested in helping me learn those things. I definitely, I think I would have struggled a little bit more if I was completely on my own and didn't have coworkers who were really trying to help me along, because, you know, they knew that I only had taken, at that time that I had started the job, I'd only taken a very basic introduction to cybersecurity course, you know, where they're talking about the CIA triad and like what phishing is, the very basics. So I knew next to nothing. And learning not only about cybersecurity and computer science in general, but also about how the company works. This is the first company that I've ever worked at, the first full-time position. So trying to nail down, how the company operates, how the team works together, and, the basics of the company products, in addition to all of the technical knowledge that I was supposed to build, was a little bit daunting at times, but I'm still standing. I made it. And I think, 3 years down the line, I still experience that on a, daily basis, where I run into things where I'm like, what is that? Never heard of that before. And so I think that the constant learning is definitely an integral part of the cybersecurity experience, no matter if you're in threat intel or incident response, blue team, red team, purple teams, all the colors of teams. I think that constant learning is something that really sticks with you, no matter what your technical knowledge is either, or your experience.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how far along you are. If you're 15 years into the game, you're still learning. It's ever changing. The landscape is evolving all the time. Yeah, how important was that then to have co-workers and management within that company giving you that space to be able to learn and catch up?
I think extremely, especially, just getting started. I had members of the team who would set up, weekly meetings with me for like an hour to just let me ask questions and like get that time, especially in a remote atmosphere where, you're not surrounded in a room by coworkers. So you can't just turn around and ask a question. I think having those moments where I was one-on-one and being able to meet and just fire off all of those questions rather than typing them out or having to second guess was very helpful to have that, face-to-face type of help. And I think if they were less willing to sit down with me and talk through all of these things, where, I literally had a coworker sit down and explain how Google worked, like like when you search something in Google, like what happens in the background. And, so these basic things that, are pretty elementary to them that I had never experienced before. If they had never given me those basics, who knows where I'd be now. But I think that it also comes with, if they're not volunteering to help you, you kind of have to be an advocate for yourself. And you can't be really afraid to ask questions and sound stupid. I think that being open to asking questions where you feel like you should probably know all the answers already is a really important part of learning and growing, is just asking, and I think I was hesitant at times to just sound stupid and be like, oh, she should definitely already know what that is. Like, how does she not know what that is already? And that imposter syndrome kind of sets in. So you have to kind of bypass that and overcome it to allow yourself to improve.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like swallowing your pride to a degree, and knowing that the questions you ask right now might make yourself seem a little bit silly, but you know that you're doing the improvement over time. And it's as you said, it's one thing I say to my team as well, is there are no silly questions. Like, everyone's here to improve, everyone's here to get better, and we're all trying to do the best for whoever we're working for at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you have to remove the ego. I want to just quickly go back to the interview process, just one more time. We've already spoken about being diligent and having that strong mindset, but what do you think sets you apart? Because clearly they saw something special in you that day. Yeah, you had a good cover letter, but you were, and I know it's right place, it's right time, the stars are aligning and all that stuff. But yeah, what do you think makes you special as a person? Because you did an amazing thing landing that job.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've asked myself, I'm like, oh, I don't know. That's a great question. No, I think, now that I've been in the industry a couple years and been able to look about what set me apart in that situation and what sets me apart in general is, not to say that I have a great personality or anything, but I think personality definitely plays a role in being able to communicate with others. Sitting on the opposite side of things, where I've sat in some interviews before and interviewed other people where, they won't even turn their cameras on, or, basic things like that, where if you show your face, if you put on a positive vibe, if you show that, hey, maybe I don't have all of this experience. And, in my current role as well, I probably wasn't the most qualified person for the role with the most technical knowledge and the most experience. But I think showing that willingness, I'm always willing to learn. And I make that very clear is like, if you ask me a question, I don't know the answer, I'll be like, no, I don't know that, but I will figure it out right now. And I will make a concerted effort to learn those things. And I think that's not something that sets me apart, but I think is something that can be very beneficial in terms of, okay, you have someone that has a lot of technical knowledge, but they feel like they've kind of know everything, and they're not willing to like go that extra mile to go outside of what their job functions are, versus a person who might not have that much technical knowledge, but is very willing to go above and beyond in their position. So if you're interviewing, I think making that as clear as like, you're excited about this job, you want it, you're willing to work extra hard, and you're going to enjoy it, rather than someone who feels like, they kind of already deserve it. So that enthusiasm, I think, really does translate when it comes to interviewing someone, having the same enthusiasm as the person who's interviewing you and returning that, and being genuine, I think is a great skill to have in terms of interviewing and in general.
Yeah.
And that characteristic and personality trait that you mentioned of, I might not know something, but I will go off and find it, and having that determination, as you've said, is absolutely paramount being in cybersecurity, not just because there's a lot to learn, but as you've already mentioned, just helps set you apart from other people. Like, I've worked with teams and I've had people on my team that, yeah, they know stuff, but if you ask them a question, they might be like, oh, I don't know. And then the back end's there. I'm like, come on, where's the I want you to go off and search, come back with all these different resources and stuff. So from a hiring manager sort of perspective, those characteristics are next to none.
Yeah, 100%. I think not having the, I guess, the knowledge to answer a question is a very small part of it. And the bigger part is being able to, or being willing to figure out the answer to the question. It's a good skill to have. And you realize that not everyone has that skill, or I guess that willingness to go and, I guess, hunt something down that they didn't know previously.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot. I'm glad you brought it up, and I think it's important to raise awareness around that you can join these big cybersecurity firms, and you don't actually have to be super technical if you don't want to. There's roles that you can step into where you're not required to be uber technical, and you can play more on your competency skills, your soft skills. And when I joined, I was a bit like you. I didn't have any experience, just, the base level foundational knowledge. They took a chance on me. I clearly did really, 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 really well in the interview. And then it was my time. As soon as I got in there, I was like you, in meetings, speaking, observing, learning through osmosis, writing down certain terms in my notepad and taking them home that night and searching them up on YouTube. It was extremely overwhelming, but I just got to a point where I was like, oh, I've caught up now. And I've spoken about it before, but I got put forward for a SANS certification in 2017, and I ended up getting it. And some people that were doing it at the same time as me, they failed, and they'd taken that conventional path and gone to college and university and got the masters and what have you, and they didn't get it, and I did. So you can definitely outwork the competition and get to where you need to be, for sure.
Yeah, I think cyber threat intelligence is definitely one of those, I guess, subsectors of cybersecurity where, you don't need the most technical knowledge. You definitely need to know the basics. I think probably like a security plus level of knowledge. I do not have my CompTIA security plus certification, but, having that base level of knowledge, but you don't have to be so in the weeds as some of the other cybersecurity specializations, which I think is kind of nice and a good entry point for maybe a lot of people who don't have that technical background. Cyber threat intelligence is a great place to start.
Yes. Do you want to? Sorry, Vaughan. Do you want to go anywhere else? Because we talk about this a lot. When you jump into the industry and you're a part of a company, once your foot's through the door, it's a lot easier to move laterally and get those opportunities elsewhere. We've seen it happen plenty of times where people have come in as SOC analysts, and then maybe they've moved to a SOC engineer role, or maybe they've gone and supported sales, or Josh went off and did product and marketing, and AJ's doing incident response. And yeah, we've seen a lot of people gone off and go on to the Reds team inside of things and be pen testers. And yeah, you're well aware of all of the different roles that exist. Do you want to go more technical, or are you happy to stay doing what you're doing?
I love that question because, there are a lot of different like roles that you can have out there. And in my transition from the IronNet, who I was working for in that threat intelligence role, I was primarily focused on strategical threat intelligence. So a lot of nation state, tracking adversaries, a lot of like the who, the means, the motive, that type of stuff. And then when I transitioned to Sophos, my intention was to be in a more technical role. I'd finally built those foundations that I needed, and I wanted to up my game a little bit. In terms of specialization, IronNet is a network detection and response focused company. So everything was very network based. Sophos, on the other hand, is very endpoint based and host based. So the sheer difference in the intelligence that we were working with and the data that's uncovered was definitely something to get used to. But now I'm in a more tactical threat intelligence role. So really focusing on that data itself, the attack indicators, the malware, the infrastructure. So I definitely became much more technical in this role with Sophos as opposed to my job with IronNet. And now that I'm kind of, settled in this role, it's the question of, okay, what's next? Do I want to stay in cyber threat intelligence? Is there a step up that I can go in a more technical role? And I'm definitely open to it. I like the technical aspect. I like learning about things that I didn't know about before. And so I am definitely open to the possibility of maybe transitioning into maybe an incident response role or something, maybe red teaming is something I don't have a lot of experience in that I think is really interesting. So I think there's a lot of possibilities out there. And that's really an exciting part is I don't really know where I'm headed next or where I want to head next, but there are so many pathways and so many different areas you can transition into. So not really sure, but I think that continually growing that technical skill is something that I definitely want to do.
I'm really glad you mentioned about the different roles and stuff. Speaking to our community, a lot of the reasons why a lot of people want to move into cybersecurity is because of all these different roles that are available. Some people might be working in, I don't know, quote unquote, dead end jobs, they're doing X, Y, Z, and they see these roles and all these different routes that can be taken as a breath of fresh air. And that's definitely the case as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of diversity, I think, and a lot of different skills that are required. And, being in cybersecurity, you can be as technical or as little as you want. And I think that there are roles to accommodate that across the board, even, having a marketing role in cybersecurity, it's cybersecurity focused. You are exposed to that technical information, but you're not in the weeds of, searching through networks every day. So I think that in the cybersecurity industry, there's something for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. The company that I'm working with now, one of the guys who's working in the SOC, he was just a regular sales guy selling MDR services, and then a job came available and he put the work in, got to where he needed to be in terms of his technical competency level, and then he got an opportunity, which is great to see. You love that. And like, again, it's like he didn't really even technically have his foot in the door because he was not that connected to the technical side of things, but he was still in a company. He saw that there was a role available. He worked hard. He put the hours in, and now he's a junior level SOC analyst. And yeah, we've just helped him get started on his CompTIA journey because we're partners with CompTIA, so we get discounts for the training bundle. So he's doing the A+ now, he's doing the Security Plus, and then hopefully we're going to get him on some cloud-based certifications. But what's your sentiment now in terms of the landscape for jobs that are available in the States? Is the sentiment positive right now, or are people thinking, oh, there isn't any jobs available? Because there's so many opportunities around. I think personally, from what I can see.
Yeah, since I'm not so into the job market right now, I can't say it with full confidence, but there are I want to say it's been consistent of like you see these mass layoffs from like big companies, like I don't want to call anybody out specifically, but you see these mass layoffs of like thousands of employees, but then you hear of all this hiring that's happening through other companies. So it feels very like individualized, like the tech industry as a whole. Maybe I can't really tell the trends, but for one specific company, maybe they're doing really well and are hiring a bunch while others not so much. When I was generally looking for other positions, before coming to Sophos, I just remember narrowing in on a couple different vendors and a couple companies that I really enjoyed reading their threat intelligence and consuming their threat intelligence. And I kind of just put an alert on those of like whenever they posted one, I would apply to it that was relative to me. And so I noticed different frequencies of like when companies would post things. Like CrowdStrike seems like they post multiple positions every day because they're a giant company that's always looking to expand, while some others maybe post one position every so often. And if that position is relative to you, great. But a lot of times, like especially in cyber threat intelligence, there's not many pickings out there. There's not a lot of people hiring cyber threat intelligence roles. If they are, they're probably offering one or two per company. So it can seem like it's a very scarce market out there to find something that's very relative to you. But maybe if you're something, in more of like an incident response threat analyst role, it could be easier to find. There might be more postings. Not that it'd be easier to get the job, but there might be more postings about them. So I think it kind of depends on what you specialize in about whether or not there's a lot of options out there.
Yeah, I think it's a great point to bring up the tech layoffs as well. From my own personal opinion, I think the market is probably going to get a lot more competitive in the short term because of all these layoffs. There's some really great experienced candidates coming back on the market that are looking for their new job. Also with like hints of recession and all that sort of stuff as well, causing the layoffs, further leading into the scarcity of the roles that are available. I think that short term is going to come to eventuality, but then once that passes and we come into better days, I do think that it will pick back up again. It's definitely not going to stay on this tangent forever.
Yeah, I've been a part of a few restructures of the business. Yeah, we're restructuring the business, and the technical guys have never really been affected. It's always those random job roles that get created that are normally quite high level in the business, and they're always getting paid loads of money, and then they realize, oh, actually, do we need them? And I'm not trying to throw shade on anyone, but that's always the case, and it's always those really random roles. People have got really random job titles, and yeah, they're the unfortunate ones. But hey ho, we're stood there, still standing.
Morgan, you said you've been in the industry now for 3 years. What is one thing that surprised you about working in cybersecurity? Because it wasn't your original path, right?
Right. Yeah. One thing I guess that has surprised me is how much related information that there is. I think that prior to coming into cybersecurity, I was really a person that liked to understand all of the different levels of how something worked. And I realized very quickly that's not really something that's possible in cybersecurity, of like learning all of the different levels and how it interacts with this and that. So I think one of the most surprising things is like how interconnected all of the knowledge is in terms of understanding a specific concept and how that concept plays out in multiple different other things. So I think connecting the dots was something that I found to be kind of difficult, and surprising was like how many moving parts there are. And in associated with that, how constantly changing it is. Like I feel caught up, and then the next day this new malware comes out that's, being used, and I feel like I'm back at square one. So the constantly changing tendencies of the landscape was something that I also found to be quite surprising, even being in like the geopolitics where it feels like things are constantly changing. Cybersecurity, it feels like a constant like cat and mouse type game of like, okay, they introduced this new technique. We, create a detection to cover it. Next thing you know, they find a bypass for that detection, and it just continues. So it just seems like a never-ending cycle of fun, interconnected, confusing things.
I'm glad you said fun. I was going to say it's all part of the fun, right?
Very fun. So much fun.
I'm glad you mentioned about the interconnectivity as well. How do you feel about learning the foundations of cybersecurity? Do you think that they're obviously relevant, but being on that bed of the interconnectedness, how important would you say it is to make sure that you are picking up all the foundations?
Very important, especially if you're, trying to have any sort of role, no matter how technical or not in the cybersecurity industry. Knowing the basics is very critical, at least for your own personal security, like knowing how to spot a phishing email and doing like the basic employee security training. Like that should be for everybody across the board, I think. But going into more of like the cybersecurity foundations, I think that having those are super critical to be able to build on them. Because if you're starting off and you're just picking random topics to learn about, like, that will leave you very fragmented without those foundations to pull everything together. So you have to start off somewhere, and starting off with those base level concepts, I think, is absolutely critical.
Yeah. How do you keep yourself accountable then to ensure that you stay relevant?
I try my best. Don't we all?
Yeah.
I feel like when it comes to staying relevant and making sure that, I'm up on the different things, I keep a very close tab on the different reporting that is published every day from different vendors, and making sure that, throughout my team members and myself, that every day I'm looking to seeing what's happening in the threat landscape and making sure that I'm on top of it as possible. Because I do feel like if you take a 2-week vacation and you come back, you do feel like a little bit lost about like what's happened in the past 2 weeks. So it does, require you to be continually trying to update yourself every single day on what's happening. But like I said, it can be really hard to keep track of all of those things, and things do slip through the cracks. So if they do, I think it comes down to, okay, if I see something that I haven't heard of before, if it's a new tactic, if it's a new malware actor, whatever it is, that I will spend the time trying to at least 5-10 minutes trying to read and learn about that thing at least a day, and make it kind of part of the routine, is making sure that you're updated with the threat landscape and working that into your day-to-day routine. Threat feeds, I use Feedly. We use OpenCTI, which is a way that I can track different threats that are emerging. So having different platforms that can help support you in that too. And with your teammates, my teammates also try to keep track of it. So they'll send, new news in Slack channels, and I think we all help try to keep each other accountable and updated as well.
Yeah, definitely. So if I'm a newbie, then where do I start to dip my toes into threat intelligence? Is there like a main website to go to, or just as an audience member, that I'm just thinking that would be something that they might want to ask.
Yeah, in terms of like how to get started in cyber threat intelligence, or I guess good sources to use as sources of cyber threat intelligence.
I guess both.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully I have answered you both. I think, if you're looking to get started in cyber threat intelligence, and I do have people messaging me every now and then on LinkedIn asking, what's the best, resources, and how can I, make my entry into cyber threat intelligence. And I do think that the easiest way, if you are completely new to cyber threat intelligence, is the SANS Cyber Threat Intelligence course. I forget the number of what it's called, but I have not personally taken that course, but I have some colleagues who have, and they thought it was really, really great. So I would recommend that. But if you don't have, a couple $1,000s to spend, or you're not part of a company that's willing to sponsor you, I think it is completely possible to teach yourself the cyber threat intelligence foundations yourself. I think there are 2 great resources that I always like to recommend from 2 big names in the industry, Andy Piazza and Katie Nichols. They both have come out with blogs titled, I think they're called the Cyber Threat Intelligence Study Plan. I think they're both titled those things, but they're great rundowns of both the skills that are needed to be a good cyber threat intelligence analyst, and then also giving you the resources to learn those skills. So what you need and how you can build out those skills to have be a good cyber threat intelligence analyst. So I always recommend starting off there. And then from there, you'll find resources that can pivot to other resources, and you can kind of build out your cyber threat intelligence knowledge. I think when it comes to sources of cyber threat intelligence, there's a lot of threat intelligence feeds out there. It can become kind of complicated when you ask what are the good sources. I think if you're completely new and you're just looking to dip your toes into cybersecurity, probably some of the bigger cybersecurity news sites like Bleeping Computer, Hacker News, those can be good overview threat intelligence of letting you know big things that are going on in the industry. As you dip your toes in a little bit more, you'll start to, I guess, latch on to certain vendors where you really like their threat intelligence and you like the reporting that they come out with. So you'll keep an eye on things, blogs that come out from those specific vendors, where I think it's helpful to have a threat intelligence feed where you'll bookmark the different vendors that you're interested in, and then have a feed where all of the blogs from those vendors can come up. So that's where I use Feedly, and I find that very helpful. But I know everybody's kind of different in the tools that they like to use. And, when it comes to keeping track of vulnerabilities, keeping track of emerging threats and malware analysis, there can be different sources that are better for those things. So I think it takes a little bit of time to be able to pinpoint what you like the most and what is of most interest to you and your organization. But once you do, there are great tools to help you aggregate and sort through all of those different blogs.
Yeah, it takes time, doesn't it, to centralize all of that. Over the years, myself, Vaughan, and all the boys, we've kind of been collating these. We're coining it the ultimate Chrome bookmarks, and we've exported that, and I believe it's in one of our school communities. I'm not sure if it's in the free one. I believe it might be.
Please share it.
Yeah. But if you're listening to this and you haven't got enough money to pay for our gold tier when we release it in about 2 weeks' time, then just send us a message and we'll get that sent to you. Because we've got all of the different tools like IP rep checks, free malware analysis tools, things like CyberChef, and then we've got a news folder as well, and some training and some cool resources.
Very helpful.
So we spoke about then resources for someone in threat intelligence. How about for some of our newbies that don't know whether they actually want to go into threat intelligence just yet? What sort of things should they know, and maybe if it would fit their personality type or not?
Great question. I would say when it comes to cyber threat intelligence, it's not an essential part, but I do think it plays a big component is the writing aspect. I think having some ability to be able, and not all of my fellow cyber threat intelligence analysts write or like to write, but I do think it is a pretty good skill to have, is being able to see highly technical information and synthesize it and translate it for a range of different audiences, I think is a critical skill as an intelligence analyst, because, when it comes to consumers of intelligence, you have people of all different executive levels, analysts, you have people with different technical knowledge and skills. So you have to be able to take a lot of technical information and translate it and make it relevant to all of those different audiences. So that, I think, is a big component, and having foundations in intelligence analysis, which can give a lot of people headaches when you think of all of the different concepts and things that are involved, like biases and mental models and logical fallacies. So if you're not interested in getting in the mess of all of those and being able to analyze and challenge your assumptions, then I would probably avoid cyber threat intel and go to one of the other many specialties within cyber. But I think that if you really do enjoy the critical thinking aspect and being able to connect the dots between different things that you're seeing and being able to write good reports, deliver good briefings, and translate the raw data that is being collected, then I would definitely say threat intelligence is a great pathway for you. Please join. We are
Awesome.
always welcoming to new people.
Yeah, definitely. If you could afterwards send us the link maybe to that threat research blog that you were mentioning, we could add it in the description for the YouTube video and the podcast bio for like Spotify, and that'd be amazing. I watched your talk, your SANS talk, when you were breaking down the ransomware as a service and talking about all of the different threat actors. How did you get started in the public speaking sphere? And you're a great public speaker, by the way. I just wanted to point that one
Thank
out.
you.
You look like an absolute pro. I don't know if that was your first time or if you've done it multiple times, but
Yes, that was one of my first presentations that I've given. At, at least in the past couple of years, I would say there's I did give a talk at Black Hat 2021, I believe. And that was a sponsored session, so my company paid for me to be there. So it wasn't one of those things where you have to submit a call for papers and get approved and all of that. It was still a very big presentation, but as someone that is completely remote, I do not have a lot of experience public speaking in front of a live audience. So I was very intimidating. And I was very nervous leading up to SANS. So I was very happy to hear that the good feedback that came from it, both in the content itself and the presentation. I was like very happy. But I was very apprehensive to enter the world of public speaking. I know without some, not necessarily with the SANS conference, but with the Black Hat conference, it took some pushing for me to do it by my manager, who was like, I believe in you. I think you can do this. And I was like, I'm so scared. I've never been to Las Vegas before. I've never been to a conference. I've never presented in front of an audience in person ever. I don't think I can do this. And they were like, yes, you can do it. And I did it, and I got over that hump. And, though I was so nervous, it was all worth it. And so I tried to channel that when it came to this SANS presentation, where, I don't have a lot of experience in public speaking. It makes me very nervous. I have social anxiety, all of these things. But, practicing and practicing and practicing, I think gave me a lot more confidence when I got out there. And now that it's over with, I was like, that was so much fun. I was like in pure pain leading up to it, where I was like so nervous. But now that it's finished, I was like, that was great. I should do that more often. And I think the cycle just continues. So I'm very jealous of people who can, just off the cuff, give these great presentations all the time. I think for some other people, like, it's kind of more of a big event, very nerve-wracking. And I think I'm definitely on that latter side, where I get very nervous, and public speaking is a very scary thing. But I think the more that you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. And there's so many really great speakers out there in the cybersecurity world that are great models of, what to aspire to. So I hope eventually, one day I can reach that level and continue to work on those public speaking skills. But it's a nerve-wracking one for sure.
it is. You look like a seasoned pro. I promise you, Vaughan, you'll have to have a watch. And I encourage the listeners and anyone watching on YouTube to go to Morgan's LinkedIn and take a look at that speaking event for SANS. It was awesome, and I can resonate with that so much. I'll just talk about a quick story from last week. So I traveled up north in the UK to my corporate job, because I'm working part-time for this cybersecurity company. And my boss asked me to do a sales presentation, and it was kind of out of the blue, which I do like, but at the same time, my brain immediately went, oh, you can't do that. And you start to doubt yourself a little bit. And there was an element of like underpreparedness as well, because I was having to create a presentation slide deck pretty quickly, and I like to be structured, I like to be organized. So immediately I was like, oh, new people, I'm not sure if I could do that. And then I was like, no, I can obviously do that. I've got the skills and I've got the competency level to be able to do that and deliver it in a confident manner. And then I prepped my presentation, and then the next day, I don't know what it was, but this is the first time that this has happened to me. I was really nervous leading up to it. There wasn't even many people in the room. There was maybe like, I don't know, 12, 13 people, but I sat down and I was really nervous. And then all of a sudden my nerves just completely vanished. And this is the first time where I've ever like spoken publicly, and like zero nerves. It was very strange. I'd love it if I could get to the point where, I don't know, I'm doing like a SANS talk, or I'm speaking at a big networking event, and I stand up there and I see the wave of people, and then my nerves just completely vanish. That would be amazing. And I'm sure that happens for a lot of people with reps, like you said. Josh, who's one of the co-founders at Empirical Training, he does a lot of speaking events, and he's an absolute wizard at it. He says that he gets a little bit nerves beforehand, and then he's pretty much good to go when he gets going. So, what are you going to do any more then? Have you got any planned, or is it just something that you're going to think about, and when the time comes,
We've been debating it a little bit. We are currently doing one big investigation that is very interesting, and I think a coworker and I are planning to submit it to Black Hat. I think the call for papers ends at the beginning of April. So I was looking at that, and SmoothCon is a great conference, very cyber criminal focused, which we tend to experience a little bit more of on the SOFO side of things. So I was looking at that. But yeah, I think we'll probably apply to Black Hat, but not, that is a very competitive conference. It's a big one out there. So whether or not it actually gets accepted is a whole different story. But yeah, my team is always constantly looking for conferences to present at and things that would be interesting. I think a lot of it is finding topics that are interesting to, the wider population and, relevant to the conference that you'd be presenting at, and getting all of that put together. I think that's kind of like the hard part. I would love to speak at some more conferences, but they're very time consuming too. I think preparing for the SANS conference did take up a good chunk of my time. So balancing that with other priorities, can be tricky at times. So trying to do like 1 or 2 a year is probably, I think, the best move for me, but hopefully attending some in the future. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. I might be butchering this quote, but I think Alex Hormozy said, outwork your self-doubt. So I think that's an important point to make, isn't it? Is when someone presents you with something and you think that you're not going to be worthy, or you don't think you're good enough, or you don't think you're confident enough, just outwork that self-doubt and keep going.
Yeah, 100%. I mentioned in this industry, imposter syndrome can be very real. And I think, if you're someone like myself or whoever who doesn't have a lot of technical knowledge or not a lot of background coming in, like that imposter syndrome can really set in, and overcoming that self-doubt and that feeling of that you don't belong there or don't deserve to be there. Like I felt at Black Hat or SANS, of like, do I really have the qualifications to stand up and tell all of these very brilliant people and explain, talk to them and have this conversation and give this presentation? And I think overcoming, as you said, that self-doubt is a mountain to climb, but once you do, it's so worth it.
Yeah, definitely. So if you weren't currently in the role that you're in now, what do you think you would be doing? Like if you were completely out of the cybersecurity industry, what do you think you'd be doing?
That is a really good question. I am not sure. I know for a fact I'd be working in person somewhere. I'm probably one of the few fully remote workers who doesn't love it. I've been remote since I started, and I've never really worked in an office building with other people. So I feel like that would probably be what I would do is work in an office with other people. It would probably be something in terms of like international security and counterterrorism, probably something focused on the Middle East and Northern Africa. I find that to be a very, interesting and right now very relevant topic and region of the world. So I would love to do something that's a little bit more geopolitics and international security focused. Definitely still an analyst role. I'm an analyst and a researcher at heart. So it'd definitely be something like that. Or I would just fall off the grid and become a chef or something somewhere, or, you know, a fishing guide in Costa Rica, you know, if I was going off the rails or something. But luckily, cybersecurity is here to stay, and I'm probably here to stay in it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so for a lot of our audience are trying to break into the cybersecurity industry, and like we're doing our very best to raise awareness around cybersecurity related topics. We're posting on socials. We're trying to create these cool communities. We're doing all of our courses and helping people in our school.com community. But what advice would you give to people that are just starting out and looking for a little bit of direction, apart from obviously following empirical training?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say what you guys are doing and the idea behind empirical training is like so important. And without like companies and ideas like you guys, I think a lot of people would struggle a lot in this industry. And I mean, they do struggle a lot in this industry. So thank God that you guys are here providing great resources that people can use to kind of overcome that barrier. Because, you know, even though I had an unexpected and kind of fell into the cybersecurity industry, there's a lot of people out there who do not have that experience, and there is a high barrier to entry to cybersecurity in general. It does exist, and I think in general, when it comes to entering the industry, I think it just takes a willingness to go out there and learn yourself. It takes a willingness to discover resources like you have at empirical training and to be able to take those courses. I think that's the first step, is just a willingness to step out of your comfort zone and learn something that you don't know, and then, you know, transition into the cybersecurity world. But I think having great, you know, labs, training courses, and study plans, resources that people can use to teach themselves, especially in this day and age where, you know, certs can be really expensive, and courses can be thousands of dollars, and you don't really want to go back to college. A lot of that falls on yourself to be able to teach yourself. So having great resources and being able to find those resources, I think, is very critical.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're trying our very best to do, is to consolidate all of that information to give people the chance to get their hands on those real world tools that are used in the corporate world. Because somebody that is trying to break into the industry, and maybe they're going for interviews, they've got a certain level of base not knowledge and competency, but they're getting knocked back because they don't have experience with the tool sets or in that environment. That's why we're creating one of the tiers within our school.com community, where it's a full-on end-to-end lab environment. So we're going to be running exploits, and they're going to be entering into a seam, and then the analysts or the members are going to be able to become aspiring test SOC analysts and work those incidents, send them through into a ticketing system, and learn the intricacies that exist within the ITSM world, learn about SLAs, how to structure analyst notes, how to liaise with customers, you know, all that professionalism, the customer service element. So we're trying to provide as much information and skills and experience as we can, and then they can take that to employers and say, hey, I might not have a job in the industry, but I've been working with the empirical training, and they've given me access to all of this information. You know, we've had a really good time in the industry, and I've been in the industry for 8 years now, and I've got a lot of experience similarly with Vaughan and AJ and Josh. And yeah, we're just trying to give back and impart some of that knowledge and skill set onto people. And yeah, like I resonate with your story a lot. It feels like we're very similar. We're all curious, and we all want to help people, and we all want to, you know, find a purpose in life. And I really do enjoy working in the cybersecurity industry, because like you said, every day is a different day. There's always something new. There's always something new to wake up to. It's never boring. It's always keeping you on your toes. It's always, you know, keeping those cogs turning up there, which I think that's really, really important. And like you said, like you're working remotely, you don't really enjoy it. We're probably the loneliest we've ever been as a world, in the world right now, as a nation or whatever. And yeah, I think it's important to connect with people and and yeah, pursue your dreams and work hard as well. One of the guys that we're really friendly with, Shane Williams, he's the sweeniest one on socials. I think he posted on his story the other day saying about how he's been talking to so many lazy people, and like people just want something now. They're probably messaging him saying, I want a cybersecurity job now, and he's like, all right, well, if you want it, then you're gonna have to do X, Y, Z. Probably might
No
take
security
you about
plus, no A plus.
yeah, it's probably going to take you like maybe 12 to 14 months of hard work, dedication, you know, having that regiment, being disciplined. All of these things play into what is required of breaking into the industry. It's not easy, but there are jobs out there. There are opportunities available. You just have to work hard and be willing, like you said.
Yeah, I love hearing about different people's journeys into the industry and how they came to be where they are, because you can have two people in the exact same position who had completely different journeys to get there. And I think that's something that's kind of beautiful is, you know, a lot of people think it's like, okay, everybody in cybersecurity like went to school for computer science and has the same background, but there's actually like so many different stories. You have people who have been in the military for 20 plus years. You have people that got the computer science degree. You have people who were in incident response, but they transferred over to cyber threat intelligence. There's just so many different pathways and ways that you can get here. So, you know, there's no one right way of, you know, how do you get into cybersecurity? I think that it can be approached in a lot of different ways, but having good resources out there, being able to work hard, I think that's kind of a, you know, consistent factor in all of those journeys.
Yeah, there's a place for everybody. You just got to work hard. And I sprinkled in a few little opportunities to plug our school community. So apologies for that. But we rarely plug anything on, especially on the
Rob,
podcast.
we need to plug it.
I know we rarely
more.
plug stuff. I know, but yeah, thank you so much, Morgan, for coming on. Your story is really inspirational, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that watch this back and listen back and can find a lot of nuggets of wisdom and inspiration. So yeah, thank you very much for
thanks, Morgan.
talking
Really
to
great
us
to meet
today.
you.
Thank you. Happy to chat. I hope you guys have a good one.
I think that might be it. I think that's a wrap.
Cyberspace.